Hello, everybody. Today is Tuesday, August 22nd, 2023, and this is the OLM Working Group and Issue Triage meeting. On today's agenda, we're going to discuss a GitHub discussion about potential updates to the working group meeting template, a couple of briefs and RFCs. Chris has a item where we're going to talk about a catalog builder service and as a general announcement, and we can just take care of this right now. I cut the v0.4.0 release of the operator controller, so I'm going to consider this one done. Then we'll go into the milestone check-in and see where we're at. With that said, let's kick it off with the old action items checkpoint. So in our previous working group meeting, what we identified was that we weren't thrilled with the format for the meeting. So I created a GitHub discussion, which you can find here. And in this discussion, I propose a new layout. It matches. The major changes include like putting briefs and RFCs that are under review front and center. So you'd have the link and the due date, which is effectively the lazy consensus state. This ensures that anybody showing up to the working group meetings are aware of briefs and RFCs that are under a discussion, and we can and that they are aware of like the date that it's going to like be lazily accepted, and hopefully this will just make it easier for us to say, hey, we've had enough time, everyone's seen this, and we can actually start implementing the work proposed in the brief and RFC. So please take a look at this discussion. If there are any changes that you want to the template, please let me know. I hope to have this changed by Wednesday or Thursday of this week, and at the very least by Tuesday next week. So our next working group meeting will be using the new template. Okay, no need. I don't think there's anything I needed to discuss here. It was more of an opportunity to update the community. I see a chat item.
You can ignore that one.
Okay. All right, so next item on the agenda was submitted by Chris, and it is a brief overview of our plans for a catalog builder service. Is Chris in the meeting?
I am.
Perfect. On that note, I'm going to stop sharing and I'm going to hand it off to you.
Perfect. So I won't take a whole lot of time. So I've talked to this team and others over the past year about some of our strategies around catalog management, air gap, and things like that. I just wanted to give you kind of an update on what we're up to. Let me see if I can. Oh my gosh, I just updated Zoom. Hopefully it'll let me. Oh no, a second. Let me share my screen. All right. Why don't you go on to the next people, and I will have to probably. Yeah, I have to quit and reopen Zoom. Why don't you go to the next one and circle back to me?
Absolutely. So I'll start sharing my screen again. Can everybody see the agenda?
Yes.
Yep. Okay. On that note, we had a item submitted by Andy, and he's sharing the RBAC permissions management brief. He wants everybody to know that it's 1 week until the lazy consensus state. And it mentions that he's not here. So if is Andy here?
He said he had something else he had to go do last minute,
Okay.
but basically nothing other than what he wrote there. So
Beautiful. Well,
yeah,
then
we're looking for review, and hopefully we get some and can move that brief to approved by the end of the week or next week.
got it. And if you look at this ties back to what we were talking about in the GitHub discussion, where instead of having to add these as topics for each week, it should just be visible to everybody. So we just go right down the agenda and we'd all see the request for reviews. And I think, Mikolai, the item that you submitted is fairly similar. So it's a request to look at the initial upgrade support RFC.
Just I already posted on Slack. Just wanted to bring it to attention for people who missed it.
Okay, and do you know what the lazy consensus date is for this one?
Yes, it is set for Friday. I believe it is 25th. So yeah, please let me know if you have any feedback by this date.
So I just added that note so people are aware. Yes. Yeah,
I was just
Jim?
gonna ask, is anyone opposed if I move things around here such that we go ahead and pull those briefs and RFC things out into their own items and attach specific dates to them?
Sorry, do you mean a new section?
Yeah, didn't we say we were gonna have a new section? I was just gonna say, like, anybody mind if I go ahead and do that? Because it'll make it a little bit more obvious.
So that is part of the proposal in the GitHub discussion, and we are, like we, as I said earlier, I wanted to do this by Tuesday or the next working group. If nobody has any objections to the proposed GitHub discussion template, like, let's just go do that. If people think like putting the briefs there is definitely going to land, we can just do that right now. But the plan was to close this in the next day or two and then update the template and then not go back.
So I think I would make a motion that we just go ahead and add at least that briefs and RFC section, like nowish.
All right, let's do it.
If anybody disagrees, then we can wait, but it seems like a fairly obvious, nice thing to do.
Yep, let's do it.
Cool.
So I'm just going to copy both of these.
Alex, I can do this in the background. We can keep going.
Okay, on that note, we're going to look at current milestones. So we have one milestone open for catalog D. So we'll open this. Does anyone have anything they want to share on these items?
Yeah, there was a Slack thread that I opened up about moving some of these items to V07 milestone, just because I don't think that we'll be able to get all of these done in the 060 milestone. I think there was consensus around lazy consensus around this stuff to move. So I just haven't gotten around to actually moving it yet.
Okay.
But for a general gist, 113, 114, and 118 are going to be the ones that are staying in that milestone. I think everything else is going to be getting removed.
Got it. So if anyone has any strong feelings about the ones that are not, click for the checkbox. Just make sure to jump on that thread or communicate with Bryce about that. But I don't have any objections to this, so I'm going to move on to the next milestone unless someone has something to raise. Okay. Great controller. As I said earlier, I got the v0.4.0 release. I'm officially going to just mark this as closed. How do I mark this as closed? Close milestone. Cool. I already queued up the next milestone, v0.5.0. It's currently due for September 8th. In that milestone, there was an item submitted by Joe that was in v0.4.0 that I moved out. Todd had gone and created some issues for the version range RFC, and I pulled those in. And then finally, there was a request to update the operator controller to use variable sources, which were recently introduced to DEPI in favor of entity sources. So completing this ticket makes it so that we can use the latest version of DEPI, which we'll need to do before some of the other work we know is in the pipelines. Any questions? Good.
I just had a question on
Yep.
the 040 release. How do folks feel about announcing that to maybe also the Kubernetes operators Slack channel? There's a lot of people in that Slack channel that it might be nice to share what we're doing with OLM v1 there, as opposed to just like our 376 people in the OLM dev channel. There's almost 5,500 in the Kubernetes operators channel. And a lot of them are all focused on developing operators and might find being early adopters of OLM v1 useful. If not, it's at least worth a share. Maybe we get some new eyes on the project, maybe some new people joining the community, stuff like that.
Yeah,
I think
so
that's a great idea.
I think that sounds great. I don't typically frequent that channel. Do we know who like the main coordinators for that channel are?
I don't think there's any main one. It's a lot of Cube Builder, Control Runtime, Operator SDK users.
Okay, then in that case, I might. I don't know the relationship we have with them, but I would just do it in a friendly manner. Be like, hey, we're working on managing. You know, there's a good chance they don't know anything about OLMB1. So just being like, hey, we're working on this project. I think that sounds great. Like get in front of more people.
Yeah, I agree, Alex.
Yeah, great suggestion.
Yeah,
Can someone speak very quickly? My headset just died. Then.
yeah, I have been speaking.
Okay, I can hear everyone again. Thank
Oh,
you.
great.
Okay. Yeah.
Sorry.
So just what I was saying is I definitely agree that it'd be nice to have like an introductory message and we could just share like the latest release. But then after that, once we've kind of introduced it, we can probably do like subsequent releases. We could just do like a basic release announcement there. That's what the operator SDK has done for a while. And I think QBuilder as well.
Okay, as long if there's been like established precedent of like, you know, operator framework projects being announced or releases being announced there, then that's way different than what I had. I thought we were jumping into a new thing, but if this is something other teams are doing in the operator framework, it sounds fine to me. Cool. So, and just for context, like my hesitation was like, I didn't want anyone to think we were like forcing our announcements into a channel where they shouldn't be. But if we have if we're already doing that for other projects in the operator framework, it seems fine.
I do agree, Alex, that I think OLM is a little bit different than those other projects. So yeah, I would just reiterate and plus one what you're saying, Alex, in terms of making sure that we don't just seem like we own the place when we announce stuff for OLMB1. And especially like this isn't production, like we're looking for feedback and contributions, blah 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 blah. Yeah, plus one.
Cool. Sorry, by the way, Bryce, for cutting you off. I had lost one of my senses with the microphone, or sorry, with the headset dying. Cool. Rock pack. So I'm gonna go off on a limb and assume that this document, this milestone isn't up to date.
That
So
is way out of date. I'm pretty sure we've already released 013. So
okay.
we need to do some cleanup there.
Would anyone like to take on that cleanup work?
Yeah, I can take care of it. This is Daniel.
Okay, can you create an action item to take care of this in the agenda?
Sure.
Okay, and I'm gonna assume that we're in a similar situation here. Yep. So 6 months ago was the last milestone. So this is another item that we need to update. So yes, Joe.
I don't know how we consume Depi in operator controller, but I do have an open issue in operator controller about getting a new release of Depi. Because I submitted a fix there for how you check for unsat problems. So I think we need. It doesn't seem like we really cut releases. I don't know if can you check real quick to see like if there are any tags on that repo, Alex? Nothing. So yeah, I think we probably need to cut a release and then we can just keep iterating the same way that we do across the board. But I guess in the meantime, that means I can go and just bump operator controller to a new commit and consume that for now because that's what we've been doing in the meantime.
Yeah. So one of the items I pulled into the sprint involved pulling in the variable source changes, so we should get that for free if we cut a release and then just pull that release in. Do you want me just to take care of that? That way you don't have to pull in a commit, Shaw.
Either way, yep. I've got a PR up right now that solves one of the next things in the milestone for operator controller. That if I pulled in a new SHA, I would change to make it even better. So I can either do that in my PR that I've already got up, or we can make another one.
All right, so Bryce?
Yeah, is there any, I guess, are we just for releases for Depi, do we just need to tag it? Or do we need to have any actual like go releaser or releasing like release automation stuff set up for creating GitHub releases? Because is there any like binaries or anything to deliver with Depi, or is it just a library?
It's just a library. Well, it was just a library. We made an off cluster bit at one point, so you can run Depi as a binary. So there is yes, Joe.
I would propose that we don't worry about that binary and publishing releases for it yet. Because it seems like it's not something that someone is specifically asking us for. If someone starts to ask for it or it becomes more valuable, then we can revisit and start using Go Releaser or something to make the binary. But I think to answer your question, Bryce, my answer would be, yeah, I think we just can tag it and say that it's a library. And if you want that binary at a certain commit, then here's how you build from source. That's what I would start with, at least.
Okay.
So
Yeah, I think that sounds good.
okay, so that leaves us with an action item. Does somebody want to go and clean up the Depi milestone and cut a release? Or rather tag a release?
I think, is there anyone that wants to stand up and say like, I don't know, is Pear here? Or anyone else that feels comfortable as like a Depi maintainer that can say like, yeah, it makes sense to make a release now.
The only individual who's actively contributed to this recently would be Nikolai.
Yeah, I see no objections, but yeah, I'm still not sure. Maybe Bear would be the best person to make this call.
Okay, let's start a thread. Pear's out of office until Wednesday, so let's do it Wednesday. We can just time it to go off, and then we can have the conversation there if we want.
That sounds good. In the meantime, I think I'll just consume the current main commit and we can just keep going the way that we've been going. And if we make a release, then great. But if not, then we're not blocked either.
Okay. And I believe this brings us back to Chris, unless anyone has comments they want to share on the milestone check-in. Okay. So Chris, are you ready to present?
I hope so.
Okay.
Yeah, like if you could relinquish the share, let me see if I can get this going here. Oh, this seems like it's going to work better now. Okay, can you see my big PowerPoint?
Yep.
IBM.
Yes, that's who I work for. Okay. So this is a continuation of something we've talked about back in January, February timeframe. So this is kind of an overview of what we do and then kind of where we're going, right? So I just want to make sure that we have this kind of in mind as we're moving forward with our whole catalog and V1 strategy. And I think we are. So IBM, we have a large catalog for all of our operators. We call it the IBM Operator Catalog, much like a lot of the Red Hat OpenShift catalogs. So hundreds of them in there. IBM uses these operators as a way to componentize their products into capabilities. So we put them together into products and solutions. It's difficult for customers to use this big catalog for production deployments because they need specific versions of things for repeatability purposes, determinism, and also not all operators have embraced Semver as well as some would like. And so there are absolutely combinations of operators that work really well together and combinations that do not work well together. So being able to install things from the operator catalog is very non-deterministic because things just roll in there all the time. So what we built a few years ago was something called a case, and it's basically a packaging system to wire together all of these operators and products and capabilities. And then we built a command line interface, which is actually a plug-in to OC, you know, the OpenShift command line tool, which allows us to interface with the cases. So it has discovery, it has the ability to do air gap and things like that. It builds upon some of the OpenShift tools. So this introduced a lot of flexibility, but it added a whole lot of complexity to that as well. So some customer issues, you know, trying to figure out which images to mirror, you know, so which cases do they need? They need to map cases to operators, to products. It gets complicated. The number of images has grown quite a bit. So we have not developed a real clean way of removing stuff from the catalog, only adding. So the amount of images that you end up mirroring are much more. Multi-architecture images, we support 3 architectures, soon to be 4, right, with the introduction of ARM. So Z, PowerPC, Intel, and now ARM. And so we use manifest lists. And so if they only use Intel, then they're getting all these other architectures that they don't need. And so that's another problem. We have these dependency chains. So how do you wire together these things? We haven't done a really great job of wiring them together such that you can get semver fixes, patches, or CSV fixes, things like that, or CVS fixes, without having to update the parents and things like that. With network latency problems with geographic regions. The storage required could be big, and there's customer imagery pool limitations. There's all sorts of registries being used out there. They have limitations and things like that, but the themes are in blue. We want to reduce the size of the catalog. We want to reduce the amount of dependencies, make it real crystal clear on what customers need based on their capability requirements. So what we've built is a way to curate catalogs. And so basically, it gives the cases give us a way to describe products and capabilities. Each case now includes a small catalog that is just a sparse list of operators and channels just for that capability. And then we build a mapping of these cases. Cases represent capabilities to these products and solutions. So you wire all these together, and then we take all these small little catalogs and merge them together into a form of single new catalog or a curated catalog. And so we do this in our back end to populate our public catalog, and we allow customers to do this on their side so they can just pick and choose the components they want. And then we build up a catalog with only the things they want in it. And so what we built is kind of like, you used to call them veneers, I think now you call them catalog templates. We built essentially our own version of this, which essentially we use semver as semver of the bundle to identify when we get these catalogs in, we conditionally replace the packages and channels. So I call it the channel and package replace strategy based on the most recent version or the highest version of the bundle that's within it. So when we get a new bundle in, I have a visual that'll explain this. We evaluate the channels and the packages, and we add or replace them conditionally depending on if that catalog is effectively newer or not. So just to show you kind of what this looks like. So if I have one of these sparse catalogs, let's say the foo catalog that has foo operator version 1.0.1 in it. It's got a channel 1.0 with these two. It's got a replaces in it, and it's got 101 and 100 in it. So this is the package, this is the channel, and these are the two bundles inside that catalog. So this is FBC, right? And then we have another catalog, the bar catalog. Same thing. They've got the bar operator package, the default channel, or the most recent version is 203. the channel. The most recent version is 203 here. So that's what these red numbers are. These are just declaring what the semantic version of the channel and bundle or the package are with relation to the catalog. So these are two independent catalogs with the bundles and the channels and the operators in it. So if we're going to merge these together, this is very straightforward. You can see that if we started with this guy and we added this to this, you would see we would just add on this package, channel, and these two bundles to it. Very straightforward. So in the future, let's say a new catalog comes in with a new version in it, 204. So it's got a newer package representation. Maybe they've got a new icon or description in it. They've updated their graph. So now they have 204 replaces 201 in this particular case. They've omitted 203, doesn't exist there anymore. But we have a new channel, a new operator. So in here, what we'll do is we'll see, oh, the bar operator from here is newer than this guy, because it's the 204 version. We replace that. The V20 channel is newer here, so we replace the contents of that. So we blindly replace these because of December. And then we add the 204 bundle here. And then now 203 is orphaned because it doesn't point to here. So we do basically a pruning exercise at the end of that to delete that out of the package. And then likewise, when we come up with the bar operator, we have like 102 version of that. We did the same kind of thing. We recognize that the package there is new, the channel is new, we merge it into here. And this just kind of keeps going on. So you can see how at the end, the customer would get this curated catalog of the things they needed, which include the versions they already had with the versions they're replacing, right? So it's doing a conditional channel replace merge. So this is the foundation on how we're building everything. So we're using Semver and we're using this methodology, and we're also using major.minor channels to make sure that we're preserving the ability to do these cross-sectional upgrades. Let's see, next slide. So, okay, so that's cool. We've been working on that for about 6 months or so. And actually we went GA with that with our IBM Pack tool. So the complexities are still there to some degree because customers still have to understand these cases, right? So this is kind of how the flow works end to end. The blue things are IBM things, the green things are customer things, and the red things are Red Hat things, so OpenShift things. And so we're heavily using a tool called OC Mirror. And OC Mirror, the piece of it that we're using is the ability to mirror an entire catalog. So we're basically allowing the customer to build this catalog, deploy it directly on their cluster if they want to, right? Or they can take that catalog, mirror the images within it, and then also deploy that catalog. So now we have one central spot of truth with a very limited set of images that they need, with only the capabilities that they need, and they preserve all the graphs of the things they want to up to or upgrade to. So the complexity here is the customer still has to figure out what these cases are. They still have to figure out, they have to call these command line tools. They have to retrieve the cases. They have to do this generate thing, which is actually the curate process. Then, then they'll get basically at the end of this, they'll get a list of images. You have to scan and validate those things. They run the OC Mirror tool against the catalog that was output from this. And then they do all their normal deployment stuff, right? So how they deploy the catalogs, how they deploy their products, create subscriptions, operands, CRs, that kind of thing. So the thing that we're doing this quarter, next year, is we're going to create a new service around this. Basically, it's a catalog builder. So we're going to build some metadata around our understanding of capabilities, and it allowed the customer to very cleanly identify the things that they want, and also allows them to start from some kind of version. So where did I start from? Throw me a catalog. This is where I started from. I want to bolt on new capabilities, which could result into new operators, select a new version, maybe upgrade, maybe there's a security patch. This could be all automated. You're going to have an API around this as well. I only want one of the architectures. I don't want all of them. How do we do that? I can explain that if you ask. And then the output of this is essentially an FBC catalog, the curated catalog. We're also going to have the image all predefined, and this image is going to be the runnable catalog with the gRPC server in it, and this will run on all platforms, even though the catalogs, we're trying to move to these homogeneous catalogs where you don't today, but we're trying to get to one catalog for all architectures. And then we also spit out this thing called the image set config, which is a Red Hat specific thing that feeds OC Mirror. And at the end of the day, really what this is just a pointer to this catalog. So once they load this into the registry, then this basically says, oh, okay, look in here and then grab all the images and then mirror those. We created images.txt file, which essentially is the same set of images from the catalog, but we just give them into a text file for convenience, right? So they can take that and they can do deltas to see what's new, what's no longer needed, what, so forth. And then we just have some state that we're going to build this system as a stateless system. So we need some state so they can modify the catalog and add new things to it. Just real briefly, this is kind of just an idea of what the screen could look like. We haven't even started this yet. So this is the curated catalog piece is done, but the UI and the APIs aren't done yet. We're iterating through that. But you can imagine, I want to select, we have these things called cloud packs, which are our products. Business automation is our product. We want this particular version. These are all of the capabilities that are available in that version. I want this particular architecture. At the end of it, we basically extract, on the server side, we build this catalog, and then they download those assets I was telling you about. And then we give them instructions on what do they do next, right? So how do they download these tools? Where do they put them? How do they use OC Mirror? How do they mirror to the registry? And then how do they deploy the product, right? So we're trying to get everything to be kind of consistent. So the useful thing here is, I think this catalog curator thing is potentially, I think, widely adoptable and usable. It might be useful for other people as well, because I think it's been solving a lot of problems for us. So anyway, I just wanted to give you guys kind of an overview. Maybe you had any questions about it, I could answer those. It's really just kind of hopefully putting a seed in your brain that the catalog approach is still important, because it still allows customers to have the ability. We're using this as, for at least for OLM v0 for sure, the ability to have consistency and determinism. So we're going to allow them to essentially check in those catalogs into Git and drive their GitOps procedures, right? And so that could drive their pipelines. And so instead of using subscriptions, manual subscriptions, starting CSVs, all that stuff, we're using catalogs to drive that experience. So that's it. That's my little short sales pitch on what we're up to. Any
Thanks,
questions?
Chris. I've got, first, that looks pretty cool. I've got one question, which is around I guess what's the process in terms of storing I guess is there an intention that customers would be able to go through this curation process to, slim down the catalog? And then in an early picture, it seemed like there was this iterative imperative. Okay, now add this. Okay, now add this. Okay, now add this. Do we store the state of each of those stages somewhere such that it can be reproducible? And the reason I ask this is Red Hat has a pipeline that can build operator catalogs, and it's imperative, and it's add this, now add this, now add this. And the thing that we've run into is that it becomes very difficult if you want to say oh, actually, I want to go back in time a little bit and change how I did one of those things. Where what ends up having to happen is you basically have to just delete the entire package and start fresh again.
Yep. Yeah. So this, just to correct there, this is not imperative. This is absolutely declarative.
Okay.
So the way we do the merging is it's idempotent. Idempotent, how you want to pronounce that? You can re-add the same old package again, and if it's old, we're not going to add it, right? And so we merge these together very selectively based on this ember. So we're relying on the operator developer to make sure that their graphs in the channels satisfy all possible upgrade scenarios, right? And because of the way that we've designed the channels with major.minor, each channel has its own graph. So that is the best thing about FBC, is that now the graphs are in the channels and not wired to the bundle, right? So that gave us that flexibility on overriding the channel graphs based on the semver of essentially each of these little catalogs that we're building together have their own semver, their logical semver based on the most recent bundle within the package. So that capability has, and I've got a whole slew of design docs around this because I've been thinking about it a long time. But that pattern works really well for us. And it may or may not work for Red Hat, I don't know, but it seems like it might.
Okay,
Yeah, so the catalog as a result is the source of truth, and that's the state.
and I guess the property of this that's different from the scenario I laid out is you can skip all the intermediate steps and say, I want this set of versions, and it results in the same thing.
Correct.
Okay. Yeah. I think that's an important bit.
Yeah, so you can add them in any order you want, and you end up with the same thing. Yep.
Yeah. It's essentially just the most recent stuff that you've added for each channel, the highest semver of the stuff that you've added for each channel always.
Yep, exactly. Yep, so we could just extend it on the whole semver concept. We drink the Kool-Aid, and we're trying to, make this as easy as possible.
So follow-up question.
Yep.
Thinking about OLM V1 and some of the stuff that we're literally actively working on right now, like we've got an RFC and a brief going about, let's just have OLM know how to do semver for channels. So it knows what the upgrade edges are because semver tells it what the upgrade edges are. It's all implicit, essentially. Does that, and I think we haven't gotten to this yet, but there's been some conversation either in the RFC or in Slack about, okay, but how does a catalog tell you that it should be in semver mode? So we haven't gotten to that part yet, but assume that in the future, maybe there's a new channel, there's a new FBC schema called like olm.channel.semver. And all you have to say there is like, here's the channel name and here's the semver range for the stuff that goes in this channel. If we did that, does that change anything? Like, does that help? Is that the right way to be approaching this? Does that change anything about the process that you've got in place here?
I'd have to think about that. I did see that brief a few weeks ago, and I did do some responding on it, and you answered some questions I had there, which is good. Possibly, because we are using semver, and I think in the correct way. We have some teams that are not using it in the correct way, just because they just, through complexities or whatever, serious bugs are showing up or just limitations. So I think it would work for the majority. We would still want the catalog to drive the life cycle, at least temporarily, until we have a better way, right? So we're trying to, this stops at the catalog. We're not going beyond how the heck do you create subscriptions, operators, all that stuff. We're just using the catalog as the way to scope, I guess, the constraints of what a tenant in a cluster could do. Because we're assuming you're essentially going to have one of these catalogs for a tenant, right? Or a cluster, right? Depending on how their customer has defined that.
Yeah. And actually, it's funny you bring this up because I think there was a recent question in the OLM dev Slack channel, someone asking, how do I do declarative version pinning? And the answer is like, the only way to do that is to curate your catalog and put the version you want at the channel head, essentially.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, we came to that conclusion about a year ago, and I know you and I and many others have come to many conclusions, and we decided, I think collectively, that instead of pruning down the monster catalog, which is really hard, it turns out, it's easier to build them up from little catalogs, because then we have much more deterministic state and control over how we build that graph. Pruning the graph is really hard, because it's hard to make some assumptions there. We're going to add the ability to do pruning, but we're going to give customers some guardrails around that. That's my next job, try to figure that out.
Okay, so one last question. I could go on and on because
Yep.
this is really interesting, but one more question, hopefully the last, is the individual small catalogs that you're talking about, the cases. Is that what they're
Yep.
called?
Yeah, the case is the packaging mechanism, and inside there we have I call them a sparse catalog. Sure. Yep.
So does that, so say you're a product foo and you depend on products bar and baz at certain version ranges, would you include bar and baz in your foo case catalog?
It can be either way. So I guess you can have a case be a collection or pre-curated sets of operators, and then you could also have them in other cases as individual things if we wanted to have them. And because of the way the merge logic works, it doesn't matter as long as nobody cheats and messes with the bundles, right? As long as the bundles, this whole thing requires that bundle 1.0.0 is always bundle.1.0.0. Nobody messed around with any of the data in there. Everything's immutable. Yeah, and then also one of the catalogs has to say I am the authority for my graph. So if anybody else is messing with a graph, they need to defer authority to somebody else if they are. So if they're going to basically lift and shift somebody else's graph and channels into their own catalog as a pre-curated catalog, they really need to honor the catalog or the graph that the original owner created. So that's going to be a standard that we have to enforce that on the back end.
Yeah, I guess my question, well, if it's all Simver, then it seems like, I mean, this is an aside a little bit, but it seems like the graph can just be implicit based on Simver semantics. But the underlying question I really had with this was, when you're doing the curation process, are you evaluating dependencies that are declared in the catalog, or is it just, I'm going to take everything that's in this case and move it into the new catalog?
Yeah, we're ignoring dependencies altogether.
Okay, so in the case where you're saying like a case doesn't include its dependencies, it's incumbent on the user to understand that and to do like select all the things they need. Otherwise, that catalog that gets mirrored, the thing is going to try to install, and OLM is going to say, sorry, your dependencies aren't met because the catalog doesn't have package baz.
Yeah, so so that's a problem. So we're modeling the dependencies differently through our capabilities. Right? So we're basically modeling the dependencies between capabilities, and that is done. We're having things like required capabilities, optional capabilities, things like that. Things that are known to work well together, things that are absolutely do not work together at all, versus things that should work together because we're honoring Semver. So we're basically wiring it together at a different level, which doesn't translate great to OLM because we still need dependencies there, but we're kind of backing off of OLM dependencies because of all of the weird problems we've been having, at least with V0, having to do with install plans, because they're kind of non-deterministic in some behaviors, how they wired things together, how we were getting kind of deadlocks here and there. You get this big bang problem where all of a sudden things try to update each other. So we're kind of backing off OLM dependencies more to avoid that, and we're going to instead do orchestrations elsewhere to try to get the operators installed and the dependencies figured out. So the dependencies on the air gap side, right? Building your catalog are the first step. And ideally then we would build some kind of orchestrator that say, hey, what did you mirror? What is available there? Okay, that translates to the runtime and how we actually provision those things. But that hasn't completely been figured out yet.
Okay.
The number one thing of this whole thing is really to make air gap simpler. That's the number one goal of this.
Yeah, so I guess my ask would be, as we start laying out more of the OLMv1 features and stuff, I think your feedback would be super helpful, and especially understanding how to do dependency management and make sure that that all is going to make sense and solve a bunch of problems that you guys are having to work around.
Yeah, I guess I would encourage you guys to reach out to me if there's something you really want me to take a look at, because there's a lot of stuff going on in V1 and some of it is pretty low level and I really don't have a lot of interest in or don't have the time to spend on it. The catalog one is absolutely one. You know, channels and Semver, all that stuff is absolutely, you know, and we talked about operands as they even fit into OLM. But there's a lot of surface area there. And so it's hard to get involved in everything super deeply.
Okay. All right. Awesome. Thanks, Chris.
Yeah, thanks for the time, guys.
Wonderful. So that covers everything we had on the planned agenda. Is there anything we need to discuss in the last 10 minutes that wasn't on the agenda? One thing we do need to do is identify a host for the next meeting. Would anyone like to volunteer?
I can run the next meeting. This is Daniel.
Perfect. Thank you, Daniel. Could you just add your GitHub handle to the host field in the agenda? One other thing I did, by the way, was add an action item for Mikla to talk to Pear about cutting over a DEPI release on Wednesday. And I think that's everything we needed to cover. So, Chris, thank you for the demo. I thought it was really interesting. And you know, I love it when we almost use the entire hour. So if anybody ever has anything they want to share or talk about in this meeting, you know, please make sure it's on the agenda and feel encouraged to do so. On that note, I'm going to stop the recording and I will see you all next week. Thank you.
Thanks,
Thanks,
Alex.
Alex.